colony was found stabbed to death outside the colony offices. Some called it an assassination. At the least, it's an open wound that's left the tribe divided in a bitter battle over leadership. Tonight, in a News Channel 8 special report, Ed Pierce looks into charges that federal authorities have failed to follow up on potential leads in this cold case. That's Murder on the Reservation, coming up tonight on News Channel 8 at 5:30.
The unsolved murder of a tribal leader. A vicious fight over Native American holdings. A federal investigation that's gone nowhere. Ed Pierce tracks down a murder on the reservation. Tomorrow on News Channel 8 at 5.
This portion of me.
Land. So why haven't the feds come up with a suspect? Thanks for staying with us here at 5:30. I'm Mai Doe.
And I'm Tad Dunbar. New at 5:30. It was nearly 6 years ago that the tribal chairman of the Winnemucca Indian colony was found stabbed to death outside the colony offices. The murder remains unsolved, as does the fight over control of the colony itself. That crime and its consequences are the subject of a News Channel 8 investigation. Ed Pierce joins us with part one of a series of special reports. Murder on the Reservation.
Tad, this is a complicated story with a lot of twists and turns, but it all begins with a question of blood and a brutal murder. The song is a prayer for help and guidance on our earthly journey. It's old, perhaps as old as the Western Shoshone themselves, sung at Sundance ceremonies hundreds, perhaps thousands of years ago. The mountains and valleys of much of Nevada was their home then, and they claim it as their own today. But by the turn of the 20th century, many were effectively homeless on land they had once roamed at will. Their plight prompted an executive order from President Wilson creating the Winnemucca Indian Colony. The colony has been home to generations of Shoshone and Paiute ever since. But today, some who spent most of their lives here say it's a home to which they fear to return. The Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs has stewardship over Native American tribes like the Shoshone, but each community is also self-governed with a constitution, a tribal council, and a chairman of their own. In February of 2000, the chairman at Winnemucca was 66-year-old Glenn Wasson. A decorated veteran of World War II, Wasson was in the mold of the traditional Indian leader. There is federal money, millions of it, sitting in trust for the Shoshone, payment for the land they argue they never surrendered. Some want to accept the money, as well as other federal grants and benefits. Wasson was not among them.
He was opposed to this distribution that President Bush and Congress forced through about a year and a half ago of $140 million.
Not everyone felt that way. Among them, a young man who had been adopted by a tribal member. William Bills had won a seat on the tribal council and was arguing the tribe should build a casino. Wasson believed otherwise. He also believed Bills was writing checks on the tribe's account without proper authority. And he discovered Bills was not even a Native American. His birth certificate shows he was 100% Filipino. Tribal and colony membership is only open to those with at least 1/4 Indian ancestry. February 12th, at a tribal council meeting, Wasson presented his proof.
And he has no Paiute or Shoshone blood. He is not qualified to be a member, the way we sit right now. And there's rumors spread that we're writing checks all over the place.
Wasson said he would move to have Bills removed from the tribe and the council in the next meeting. 10 days later, Wasson would be dead, and Bills would be in charge. February 23rd, Glenn Wasson was found lying in a pool of blood. He had been stabbed 13 times. It's believed Wasson was killed sometime around 9 o'clock at night. His body lay undiscovered out here until the next morning. But it would take investigators hours longer to reach the scene. And some would say that slow response says a lot about the investigation that followed.
He said he died of a heart attack. Is what the FBI guy told me. And I said, no. I said, there's too much blood.
Within 24 hours, the blood had been washed from the sidewalk. A few days later, Bills, now acting as chairman, sold the very ground around the crime scene as topsoil to a local contractor. Nearly 6 years later, Glenn Wasson's murder remains unsolved.
That murder's never been investigated. There's been a conscious and deliberate failure to investigate that murder from day one.
Bob Hager represents the Winnemucca Tribal Council, a body that claims to be the legitimate authority for the colony today. Files for his long legal fight to establish that authority and press other tribal claims fill boxes and cabinets in his Reno office. Among them, copies of a series of cashier's checks bought by the colony smoke shop in the months following Wasson's death. They total more than $50,000. In a sworn statement, another tribal member says he saw a colony resident cash them in Winnemucca casinos. There's no apparent explanation for these checks. The man had not been a colony employee. Hager says the evidence was offered to investigators years ago. To date, he says, the FBI has not responded.
What it reflects in the minds of the enrolled members at the Winnemucca Indian Colony is a lack of concern with regard to the murder of a tribal member.
And to those close to him, those who followed him, Glenn Wasson's death remains an open wound.
They took away our leader. They took away my teacher. He was my sweat lodge leader and my friend.
Now, the FBI will say only that this is still a pending investigation, still open. The spokesman told us today that interviews are still being conducted, leads followed, and anyone with information should contact their Elko office. Much more than the investigation remains unresolved. Glenn Wasson's death set off a bitter struggle for leadership at the Winnemucca colony, a struggle that continues today. That story.